studios of iHeartMedia here in Atlanta and Talk Radio 640 WGST. This is Rich Sullivan continuing our Candidates Forum Decision 2017 coming up in November, where Atlanta will elect a new mayor. And one man seeking that office is Michael Sterling, who has some experience at City Hall. Welcome to the studios of WGST.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So a little bit of time at City Hall working as an assistant under Mayor Reed. Talk just briefly about what your responsibilities were there and what it is that you're doing right now.
Sure. In 2011, Mayor Kasim Reed recruited me to become his senior advisor. I was serving at the time as an assistant United States attorney, federal prosecutor. I came to Mayor Reed's office to be a senior advisor, specifically related to issues of public safety, related to issues of working with our labor unions, being his liaison to the North Georgia Labor Council, and then advising on a whole host of issues, including creating the city's film and entertainment office, which now exists and has helped Atlanta grow in the film and entertainment business. I did that for about 3 years, and the mayor asked me in 2014 to take over the city's workforce development agency, which was undergoing some really tough times. It was recommended for closure by our city auditor, and there were federal investigations into mismanagement and corruption of federal funds. I took that over in 2014 and spent 2 years turning that agency around, expanding services and helping people all over our city find jobs.
Your first day on the job, I believe it's been widely publicized, a stack of subpoenas sitting on your desk there when you took that position.
Yes, yeah. Coming from the U.S. Attorney's Office and having the experience as a federal prosecutor, I think it we wanted to send a message that we were going to clean it up. At the time, we wanted to make sure that I had no experience in workforce development before I took the job, but I did have experience in dealing with corruption. And so I wanted to make sure my very first and my main priority was making sure we restored the public's trust and that we restored integrity and ethics to that organization. And I think we did that, and I left it in good hands.
What we're doing with the time that we have today is giving the candidates the opportunity to speak on a couple of issues. There are so many, but we've pared down what I believe are three very important ones, important to people who will be voting in this upcoming election. And it is a broad topic, the one that we start with first. Transportation and infrastructure within the city and the metro Atlanta area. Where are we? Where are we going? And how will you influence that as Atlanta's next mayor, should you get that position?
Well, I think we've got a long way to go. This is a really important issue, I think, in this election. I'm actually going to be releasing an opinion editorial later this week regarding my plan for infrastructure, which is a bold one to lead Atlanta into the future. But I think this is an opportunity for us as candidates to really talk about what our bold vision is for infrastructure, because it's going to form what the foundational economic health of the city will look like over the next couple of decades. The city's got about a $750 million infrastructure backlog, meaning that we've got crumbling roads, bridges, sidewalks that haven't even been repaired or restored to what is a workable level. And so we've got to make sure that we address that backlog. Our residents sit in unruly traffic every single day. That's an issue. And while we're fixing sort of the problems, we also have to build the infrastructure for the future. And so I'm releasing later this week a 9-point plan to fix our infrastructure problems and to boldly lead Atlanta into the future. It includes a multi-sector solution to infrastructure. So infrastructure is about connecting everyone. So it isn't just about roads and bridges. It's also about broadband networks. It's about water. It's about everything we do that connects us all one to another. I'm going to include in that an infrastructure investment fund, which we believe will require a one-time capitalization, which if managed properly can help us find innovative funding for the infrastructure project so we don't have to keep relying on another sales tax increase. And we're also going to talk about developing public-private partnerships, working with private entities who want to invest in the city's infrastructure, who will benefit and are benefiting from improved infrastructure in the city. We want to create public-private partnerships that can help, develop our infrastructure more quickly, deliver projects more quickly, deliver projects to scale, and do it at a rate that doesn't require total reliance on the government's general fund. But we've got a lot of work to do with the infrastructure, a lot of work to do with infrastructure, because it's going to determine whether or not our city can can prepare for the 2 million residents we're expecting to move into the city over the next 3 decades.
And no doubt emergency preparedness will be factored into that as well in the wake of some of the recent storms. Let's talk about the Atlanta Public Schools. We're now a few years removed, thankfully, and moving in the right direction away from the cheating scandal. How do you think Maria Karstafen has done as superintendent, and how are the schools doing right now, especially in terms of really using that as a tool to incentivize businesses to relocate here?
I think we're on the right track, but I think the city has to do a better job of being a partner with the Atlanta public school systems. My grandfather used to tell me that when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. What we've seen is a lot of fighting between our public officials, between City Hall and the school board, APS. And what I want to do is, when I'm mayor, I want to be a partner in chief with the Atlanta public school system. I want to make sure that, since we all serve the same families, the same communities, the same neighborhoods, the same children, I want to make sure that we're hand in hand working together to improve the educational outcome. Atlanta can't be a great city without a great public school system. And so I want to make sure that the things that the city can do outside of the classroom that impact student learning and performance inside of the classroom, that we do that. Whether that's offering more tutoring for APS students at our centers of hope all throughout the city, whether that's making sure that families have access to jobs so students aren't worried about whether or not their lights are going to be cut off when they get back to school. I've had an opportunity to talk to teachers and school board leaders all throughout the city of Atlanta, and they often tell me about the hierarchy of needs, which is that a lot of students come to their classrooms hungry, some come homeless, and it's hard to get students to focus on what's important in the classroom when there are all of these issues outside of the classroom. So I want to work hand in hand with the Atlanta public school system to address those social and systemic issues that impact our student learning inside of the classroom, and I want to be a good partner in chief with Maria Karstafen, who I think has APS on the right track.
It's Decision 2017, and this is 640 WGST here in the studios of iHeartMedia with Atlanta mayoral candidate Michael Sterling. We have some huge assets here in Atlanta. We have the biggest airport in the world, the busiest airport in the world. We have Coca-Cola, we have Delta, we have UPS, NCR, Newell Rubbermaid. Lots of companies are coming here. How do we keep that momentum going?
Well, you started with, I think, the first two issues that are going to help keep that momentum going. One is making sure we've got the infrastructure to continue to compete for companies. Companies want to be in places where there's access to mass transit, where their workers have an easy time getting to the jobs, where we can deliver their products their finished products to market. We've got to be a logistics hub and an infrastructure hub that makes it easier for these companies to exist in the city. And we've also got to have a pipeline of talent, which is where our public education system comes into play. And so I think making sure that the fundamentals of this city, I think education, infrastructure, and then I would add to that probably public safety, making sure that the fundamentals of our city are doing so well that companies want to be in the city of Atlanta, I think is first and foremost. And then continuing to be a business-friendly city, understanding that businesses provide the economic foundation for Atlanta, and that they provide opportunity and career ladders to help us eradicate the income inequality and the low economic mobility that currently exists in the city of Atlanta.
A couple of great institutions of higher learning, too, right here in the city and the state, for that matter, too. When you look at Atlanta and the growth that we have seen happen here, some of it overnight, some of it over time, the last 20 years, I moved here in 1994, the buildings have just come up. The skyline is a lot different. What amazes you the most about the city where we are now compared to even just 10 years ago?
I think what amazes me the most is that Atlanta is such an intentional city. So Atlanta just decided it was going to be a great city, and it became a great city. We didn't have any sort of natural assets like a lake or a river like Chicago or like New York or like LA or even like Houston. Atlanta just decided it was going to become a great southern city. And with the work of civic leaders, with the work of political leaders working hand in hand, Atlanta has continued to grow and sort of adapted a tradition of working hand in hand with one another and continuing to do things for the mutual benefit of the city. And so I think that's what's been so amazing about Atlanta is it adapted a tradition that has continued on for at least, almost a century now. And so the work that Atlanta has done over the last 20 years, over the last 30 years, over the last 50 years has been a result of partnerships between political and civic community that just keeps Atlanta growing. And I think that's a tradition I certainly hope to continue to move Atlanta into the future.
If folks visit your website, they can, of course, learn more about you, but you have a letter to Atlanta posted there. And as we wrap up, I just want to give you the opportunity to kind of just make your pitch for why folks should be
Shall I look in the
your
camera?
name. Look in the camera.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, this election is about a fight against the status quo. If you're frustrated with the problems and challenges our city continues to face, traffic and infrastructure, the infighting between political leadership, the ideas that we can't educate all of our children throughout the city equally on parity, the income inequality that exists in our city, the failure for us to develop economic mobility for residents who are born into poverty to climb out of poverty. If you're frustrated by the status quo, I'm your candidate. I'm a candidate who is running against the status quo, who is running to make sure that we can invigorate our city and we can build an Atlanta for the future, and we can boldly lead our city into the future and accept all of the challenges and solve all of the problems that our city faces. And we can do it working hand in hand and working together. So if you will support me for mayor, we will take Atlanta boldly into the future.
Michael Sterling, thank you so much. This is Rich Sullivan here on 640 WGST at the studios of iHeartMedia. Appreciate the visit.
Thank you so much, Rich.